He thought her silence meant defeat, but silence is not surrender. Silence is an execution without blood. A man never truly fears rejection. What he fears is irrelevance. When a woman no longer reacts, no longer competes, no longer fights for his validation, the mirror shatters. The illusion of power that held him upright dissolves into dust. You can watch it in his eyes, that flicker between arrogance and confusion, as if the sun suddenly refused to rise when he demanded it. Most women have been trained to compete for love, to prove, to please, to contort, to offer their softness like a ransom for attention. They are told that devotion is a virtue, that sacrifice is romance. But the woman who refuses to compete is not gentle, she is terrifying. She carries a stillness that unmans the male ego. She no longer hunts affection, she has burned the need. He meets her and senses something is off. She does not dance to the rhythm he expects. His charm slips off her skin like rain on marble. His provocations fall flat. The scripts he used on others fail to ignite her. He does not understand that she has already seen behind the curtain. She knows that desire is often a disguised hunger for control. In his presence, she is quiet, but not submissive. Her silence is a wall of mirrors that reflects him back to himself. Every attempt to assert dominance echoes into emptiness. This is the secret alchemy of the woman who no longer competes. She transforms the battlefield into a void, and in that void, his ego collapses under its own weight. He tries harder, he boasts, he tests her patience. He performs strength to hide the trembling inside. The more she does nothing, the more he unravels, because deep down, every man fears a woman who does not need to be seen. She exposes the fragility of his masculinity, that it exists only when reflected in female admiration. Once she begged, she bent. She made herself small, hoping to be chosen. Her wound was ancient, the fear of being too much, too intense, too wild to be loved. She silenced herself to keep him comfortable. She mistook emotional starvation for loyalty. She mistook self-abandonment for love, but suffering is a forge and fire purifies. The moment she stopped begging, something sacred rose from the ashes, not a woman, but an archetype. He feels it before he understands it, that quiet shift when her energy detaches. Her words become minimal, her gaze distant, her movements deliberate. She is not cold, she is pure equilibrium. There is no anger left, only clarity. The witch emerges not as a destroyer of men, but as the destroyer of illusions. This archetype is older than mythology. She is Hecate standing at the crossroads, choosing silence over explanation. She is Medusa, whose power lies not in beauty but in gaze, the power to turn deception into stone. She is the siren who no longer sings because the shipwreck has already happened. A man feels the echo of her energy and mistakes it for danger. He should, for she has become the mirror of his own repression. Every insecurity he buried, every lie he told himself about strength and control, she reflects it all without mercy. She does not punish him, she lets him face himself. That is punishment enough. You might think this kind of woman is cruel, but cruelty implies emotion, and she has transcended that field. She does not seek revenge, she seeks nothing. And in that nothingness, her power becomes absolute. For the opposite of dependence is not dominance, it is indifference. When he tries to provoke her, she remains still. When he withdraws to make her chase, she does not move. When he mocks her silence, she lets the insult die in the air, untouched. The game collapses because she no longer plays. This is the crucifixion of his ego. The woman who refuses to compete kills his illusion of superiority. She does not raise her voice, she removes her presence. And absence for the ego is death. You have been taught to explain yourself, to make him understand, to prove your worth. But understanding is not what liberates you, detachment is. The less you justify, the more sacred your silence becomes. Tonight, sit in that silence. Do not text, do not explain. Let someone feel your absence like a funeral. That is not cruelty, that is balance returning to the world. Because a woman who refuses to compete is not passive. She is the final stage of evolution, the anima unchained from collective hypnosis. She has integrated her shadow, reclaimed her instincts, and severed the need for external validation. She is no longer waiting to be loved. She is watching who dares to rise to her level of calm. And the truth is simple. He cannot conquer what does not need him. He stands before her, still trying to decipher the silence that surrounds her. It feels like an atmosphere, thick and electric, pressing against his chest. He speaks louder, hoping to awaken a reaction, but she remains distant, unbothered and beautifully untouchable. What he does not realize is that she no longer lives in the same psychological dimension as him. For him, every connection is a contest. Every word is a tool of persuasion. Every gaze a performance. His masculinity is built upon the illusion of conquest. He does not know how to love without proving something, without the tension of winning, without the thrill of being chosen. He needs resistance to feel alive. But what happens when there is no resistance, only stillness? She gives him nothing to push against. No argument, no emotional collapse, no validation. The ego cannot feed on stillness, it starves. Slowly, his confidence begins to flicker. He senses her absence even when she stands before him. He feels unseen, and for the first time, he tastes the emptiness he once fed her. This is the mirror moment, the dark alchemy of feminine detachment. She reflects his games back to him, stripped of glamour. He begins to see his manipulation for what it was, fear disguised as charm, control disguised as love, domination disguised as leadership. He cannot bear the exposure, so he accuses her of being cold, of being heartless, of being the problem. He does not understand that she is not punishing him. She is simply done performing. There was a time when her heart bled for understanding, when she wanted to heal him, when she saw the broken boy behind his cruelty and tried to love that ghost back to life. But that compassion was her downfall, because empathy, in the hands of the unhealed, becomes a weapon against the giver. He drained her spirit while claiming he loved her strength. He admired her fire until it burned his control. Then he demanded submission disguised as partnership, and like countless women before her, she tried to comply. She folded her wings, believing that humility was the price of love. But something broke the spell. Maybe it was a moment of quiet humiliation, the kind that etches itself into the bones. Maybe it was the way he smirked when she begged him to care. Maybe it was the silence after another unanswered message. Whatever it was, the illusion cracked. She saw the truth. He never loved her, only the reflection of his dominance in her eyes. So she stopped trying. In that moment, the feminine wound transformed into power. Her fear of abandonment became solitude. Her desperation for attention became clarity. Her pain transmuted into silence. What once made her small now made her sovereign. He cannot understand this transformation, because to him, love is validation. But to her now, love is recognition, and she recognizes herself. This is the psychology of the unbothered woman. She no longer operates from emotional scarcity. She is not chasing approval because she has seen what approval costs: her peace, her dignity, her essence. The man who stands before her can sense it. She has withdrawn her emotional oxygen, and his ego suffocates in the vacuum. This is not revenge. It is nature reclaiming balance. When she walks away, she does not slam the door. She lets it close itself. She does not send messages, explanations, or warnings. The silence stretches across his days like fog. At first, he dismisses it. Then he misses it. Then he breaks under it, because he realizes that her presence was the only thing that ever gave his life rhythm. Without her, he is faced with himself, and there is nothing there. You too have done this dance. You have given, pleaded, lowered your standards in the name of love. You have mistaken pain for passion and self-erasure for loyalty. You have begged to be seen by men who were blind to themselves. You thought silence meant you were losing. But silence, when it is chosen, is the highest form of power. To refuse to compete is to declare, "I am not in your game." When a woman no longer plays, she breaks centuries of conditioning. The collective feminine voice that once whispered, "Be good, be kind, be chosen," fades into nothing. In its place, a new voice emerges, deeper, colder, ancient. It says, "I am." She does not chase closure because she understands that closure is just another attempt to control perception. She does not seek validation because she knows her value is not a debate. She does not need to win because there is nothing left to prove. He senses this shift and grows restless. The man who once thought himself dominant becomes small in her presence. His ego trembles. His words falter. For the first time, he experiences what women have endured for lifetimes, the pain of invisibility. The woman who refuses to compete forces him to confront the wound beneath his pride, the fear of being ordinary, the fear of being unchosen, the fear of being nothing without admiration. And that is what she gives him, nothing. Not as vengeance, but as truth. He begins to dream of her, not the way he once did when fantasy was control, but in fragments. A voice without sound, a figure at the edge of perception, her abs. Ense becomes an entity that follows him, quiet and relentless. He cannot forget the way she looked through him, as if seeing his soul and finding it unworthy of reaction. That gaze was not rejection, it was transcendence. He tries to fill the void she left. New women, new conversations, new flattery, but every voice sounds hollow. Every smile reminds him of her silence. For the first time, he understands that power is not loud. It is the one who speaks least, the one who walks away without ceremony, who leaves the deepest wound. The male ego is not built to withstand indifference. It craves battle, needs resistance to feel significant. Her refusal to compete strips him of meaning. Without her emotional engagement, he is forced to face what lies beneath his identity, the trembling child who never learned to exist without validation. You can see the unraveling if you know how to look. His gestures become exaggerated, his confidence performative. He seeks attention, not from her, but from the world, hoping someone will restore his sense of dominance. But deep down, he knows. The woman who refused to compete took something he cannot replace, the mirror that once made him feel powerful. She does not chase, explain, or return. Her energy is elsewhere now, retracted from the collective game of proving and pleasing. When she withdrew, she dismantled the structure of his egoic control, because power only exists when it is believed in, and she no longer believes. This is where the story turns mythological. She becomes the shadow queen, not the lover, not the nurturer, but the archetype of consequence. Every man who meets her feels it, even if he cannot name it. She is not cruel. She is the reflection of everything he has denied. His hidden weakness, his unspoken insecurity, his inability to love without control. She brings it all to the surface merely by existing. That is the secret of dark feminine energy. It does not attack, it reveals. When she looks at him, he feels the weight of his own pretense. When she says nothing, he hears his lies echo. When she walks away, he feels the truth collapse around him. She is not punishing him. She is completing the psychological circle. The projection returns to its source. The anima he rejected becomes the mirror of his emptiness. Carl Jung called this the encounter with the shadow, the confrontation with everything one refuses to acknowledge within. For men, this shadow often appears through women who will not bend. They are drawn to her and terrified of her. She does not nurture their ego, so she becomes a threat. Yet she is the medicine they need, wrapped in the venom they fear. She is his unclaimed soul, staring back with indifference. The feminine that refuses to compete embodies the final stage of individuation. She has made peace with her shadow, the envy, the anger, the longing to be chosen. She no longer projects it outward. She owns it, wears it like armor, moves through life with the stillness of someone who has nothing to prove. Her power is not dominance, it is neutrality, and neutrality is unshakable. Men who have not faced their own unconscious cannot understand neutrality. They mistake it for disdain, for arrogance, for emotional death. But neutrality is the highest form of control, not over others, but over oneself. He will try to provoke her again, perhaps with silence of his own or with feigned indifference. But she does not notice. His strategies belong to a world she has already outgrown. The moment she detached, the dynamic collapsed. What he does not see is that he no longer exists in her psyche. That is the true execution, not hatred but deletion. Every word she withholds, every response she refuses to give deepens the cut. Because he realizes something she understood long ago. The opposite of love is not hate. It is nothing. You may think indifference is easy, but it is not. It is the result of a long death, the burial of the girl who begged to be loved, the woman who mistook pain for passion. It is the rebirth of a mind that no longer feeds the illusion of control. She has entered what Jung would call the realm of the self, the totality beyond projection, beyond gender, beyond the need to be seen. Now when he reaches out, he touches air. When he calls her name, there is only echo. And in that silence, he begins to feel what she once felt, the unbearable awareness of being unseen. This is not revenge, this is symmetry. You have been on both sides of this mirror. You have been the one who begged and the one who withdrew. You have tasted the humiliation of chasing and the ecstasy of detachment. And if you are listening now, you already know which side of the mirror you belong to. Do not seek to be understood. Do not explain the silence. Let it speak. Because every man who meets a woman who refuses to compete will meet his own shadow through her. And every woman who learns not to compete will finally meet herself. He begins to sense her even when she's nowhere near. The memory of her silence lingers like a haunting presence, not angry, not forgiving, simply there. He can feel that gaze in the back of his mind, unflinching, stripped of warmth and need. He calls it pride, but what he truly fears is her stillness, the kind that makes noise meaningless. In the beginning, he thought dominance meant control. He believed he could shape her emotions, orchestrate her reactions, make her yield by withdrawing his affection. But the woman who refuses to compete has rewritten the laws of power. Her indifference dismantles his dominance because it reveals the truth he's never dared face. Power only exists when the other still desires it. Now she does not. He keeps reaching for her energy, the spark, the softness, the chase. It is gone. His words fall flat, his charm dissolves into static. She listens, but not to understand him, to measure the hollowness behind his voice. What once felt magnetic now feels theatrical. The roles are reversed. He performs, she observes. And that distance between performance and perception is where his ego begins to die. The woman who refuses to compete carries no hate. Hate is still a form of attachment. She feels nothing. That nothingness is what terrifies him because it is the one power he cannot manipulate. When she was emotional, he could control her. When she was quiet, he could provoke her. But now, she has disappeared into neutrality, and neutrality cannot be seduced. He starts to remember the moment she waited for his message, the way she once softened her edges to make him comfortable, how she tolerated neglect in the name of understanding. But the woman she used to be is gone. She was the offering. The new one is the altar. Every interaction now reveals the imbalance he once denied. When he speaks of strength, she sees fear. When he speaks of loyalty, she hears control. When he speaks of love, she feels need. It's not his words she rejects, it's the vibration beneath them. The tone of ownership, the residue of power hunger. And he can feel it that his usual strategies are failing. His humor doesn't reach her. His withdrawal doesn't move her. His silence no longer compels her to chase. He's not used to that. He's not used to being powerless in the face of calm. You can almost see his ego unraveling. The slight tremor in his voice when she doesn't react. The sudden defensiveness when she looks away mid-sentence. The questions he asks to fill the void she leaves. The panic behind his composure. He tells himself she's arrogant, that she thinks she's better than him. But deep down, he knows she's simply free. Freedom is the most dangerous quality a woman can possess. It cannot be bought, seduced, or contained. It moves with quiet precision. It walks away before anyone realizes what's been lost. It turns emotional dependence into sacred distance. He will call her detached, but what she truly is complete. The mythology of the dark feminine begins here. She is no longer the lover seeking union. She is the mirror forcing integration. Her energy is lunar, reflective, cold, yet devastatingly revealing. The light she casts exposes everything the masculine has buried: his fear of failure, his addiction to control, his hunger for praise. She does not confront him with words. Her existence is asterisk confrontation. This is the Jungian dance of projection and withdrawal, the masculine shadow meeting its own wound. In her stillness, he meets his own chaos. In her indifference, he meets his own insecurity. In her rejection, he meets his own absence of self. And you listening now, know this is not about him anymore. This is about your own liberation. The moment you stop competing for love, the moment you stop proving your worth, the game ends. When you detach, you are no longer on the battlefield. You become the silence after the war, vast, empty, sacred. You are the reckoning that no man can win against, because your power does not depend on his recognition. This is why she does not chase, why she no longer explains, why she doesn't return calls. She has stepped into the archetype that men dream of and fear simultaneously, the woman who is beyond persuasion. She no longer carries her pain as a wound. She wears it as a crown. The same intensity that once made her desperate now makes her sovereign. He will keep replaying her absence like a riddle he cannot solve. He will tell others she was cold, difficult, unfeeling. But every night in his private thoughts, he will admit what he cannot say aloud: that she was the first woman who did not need to win him because she had already won herself. And that realization will follow him through every encounter after her. Every new woman will be measured against her silence. Every connection will feel like noise compared to her stillness. Because once a man meets the woman who refuses to compete, he is never the same again. And once a woman becomes her, she never returns to the girl who begged. Tonight, remember this. Do not chase closure. Do not soften your silence. Let absence do the speaking. The one who cannot meet your stillness is not meant to hold your fire. There comes a point when he stops pretending he's indifferent, when the silence he mocked begins to suffocate him, when he realizes that indifference from her was never a tactic, it was truth. The woman who refuses to compete has nothing left to prove, nothing to hide, nothing to lose. That kind of freedom is unbearable to the ego that lives on reaction. He begins to circle back, disguised in humility. The voice that once commanded now seeks permission. He tells himself he's changed, that he understands her value. But she knows the pattern too well: repentance as manipulation, vulnerability as strategy. It no longer moves her, because she's not reacting to the man. She's reading the energy beneath his words, and the energy still reeks of hunger. He wants her forgiveness not for her sake, but for his own relief. He wants her warmth back to feel whole again. But she knows the truth of this dynamic now. He never loved her essence, only the reflection of himself in her eyes. Without that reflection, he feels invisible. That is what destroys him, not her rejection but her perception. To be seen and measured, then dismissed without malice, that is the deepest wound a man can suffer. She did not destroy him, she revealed him, and he cannot unsee what she showed him. Once she would have felt pity. Once she would have opened her arms and offered another chance. But pity is the final chain of the empath. To pity is to remain entangled, and she is done with entanglement. Now she watches him from a distance, not with contempt but with clarity. She recognizes the shadow that ruled him, the same shadow that once ruled her, the compulsion to earn love by suffering. She no longer carries that disease. This is the turning point of power, when a woman stops trying to heal others and starts protecting her own energy. Healing him was never her purpose. Awakening herself was. She has entered the stage Jung called individuation, the integration of shadow and light, the union of all fragments. She no longer divides herself into good and bad, soft and strong, lover and warrior. She has become one, whole, untouchable. Now her energy moves differently. She walks without rush, speaks with economy. Every gesture carries weight. She does not persuade because she does not need to. Presence itself is her language. Men sense this power and approach with fascination. Some see her as a challenge, others as salvation. But she knows better. Fascination is the first symptom of projection. They are not seeing her. They are seeing their own unclaimed depth, their own unlived power. She does not indulge it. She does not play muse. She knows what happens to women who become mirrors they shatter. So she stands outside the narrative entirely. She loves, perhaps, but without illusion. She can feel desire without falling into dependency. She can care without collapsing. That is what terrifies the unhealed masculine, a woman who feels deeply yet remains unmoved by manipulation. Her silence is not distance, it is discernment. He tries one last time, the apology, the confession, the performance of insight. She listens, the same way the ocean listens to a whisper, without reaction, without resistance. He finishes speaking, expecting something, a tear, a word, a signal of softness. There is none, only that unbearable stillness. She looks at him as if measuring the weight of his soul. Then she turns away, slowly, without anger, without haste. He will never forget that moment, the quiet click of her departure, the way his chest constricted, not from heartbreak but from exposure. Because in that instant he knew she did not leave him. She simply stopped existing within his story. This is how the dark feminine ends things, not with rage but with transcendence. And this is what every woman must understand. The opposite of emotional chaos is not numbness, it is mastery. To feel and not be ruled, to love and not lose yourself, to walk away without bitterness because your soul demands silence more than validation. You may still feel the echo of your old self, the one who begged to be seen, who over-explained, who confused suffering with meaning. She will whisper sometimes, begging to return. Do not answer her. She died for your freedom. Tonight sit with your power. Do not text. Do not soften the silence. Let it echo. Let the world wonder where you went. Let those who fed on your emotions starve in your absence. Because the woman who refuses to compete does not destroy men. She dismantles illusions. She brings the truth to light by withdrawing her energy. And that truth burns hotter than revenge ever could. She is not cruel, she is inevitable. He will call it loss, she will. I'll call it return. And one day, long after the noise has faded, he will remember her calm and understand what it truly was, not rejection, but reflection. The mirror he could not face, the silence he could not conquer, the woman who became her own universe. The woman who knows her worth does not argue, she vanishes.